Hopefully, we remember a little bit about the arrangement of particles in a solid, liquid, and a gas. Let's take a look at how sound interacts with each of these. The first thing that we should note is that the sound leaving each of these sources, a person saying hi, a whale making a sound in the ocean, and somebody knocking at a door, is represented as energy. And that is because the sound leaving each of these things is energy. Sound waves are a form of energy. So now let's take a look at how they travel through different mediums, solid, liquid, and gas. So as energy comes in from each of these sources, that energy is transferred to the particles in each of these mediums. For example, the energy from the person saying hi is transferred to the particles in the air. The energy from the whale is transferred to the particles in the water, and the energy from the hand knocking on the door is transferred to the particles in the wood. That energy then excites these particles, and they interact with one another, kind of like dominoes falling. One falls, hits into the other, until finally it reaches the receiver, which is an ear, a hydrophone, and an ear once again. So these particles kind of work like dominoes. And if our dominoes are far apart, like in a gas, the process is not as efficient. Whereas in something like a solid, sound travels very, very fast because those particles are so close to one another. Those dominoes are falling so quickly. So with this information, you can deduce that in a gas, like in this room right now, sound is actually traveling pretty slow, especially when you compare it to something like a liquid, where the particles are a little closer. And even more so whenever you compare it to a solid, where those particles are so close that the sound travels through them very, very quickly. But what happens when we don't have any particles? We call something a vacuum whenever there are no particles in that space. Outer space is a partial vacuum, meaning there are very few particles. They are very far apart from one another. So when our astronaut tries to say hello to another astronaut floating around, that energy from his voice tries to interact with those particles. It tries to cause vibrations, and it tries to carry that sound, but since there are no particles, the sound cannot travel. So your answer is sound cannot travel in space because there are no particles for the energy to interact with.